Okay. Christine Rose. Is that John? All right, let's see. Let me put on a little something and give people time to get in. Let's see. Here. Let's do this one. Here. All right. Share. Let's see. John is, oh, that's you, Christine Rose. Okay, John, give me a second. I'm gonna play a little intro and then I'll pull you up. This way I can share it into the network and then give people some time to get in. I'll be right with you, John.
Machawe samite o chivasi e kamatai. Masetea achiamate. Me sawe chawatamake. E sawe chamate. Matea. Matea. Chema sawe mate. Hi. Aishta matikia tamataya mohaya. E chamatia e sakataya matoi. E samatia e mai mataya mai.
All right, let me pull John up. Hello, everybody. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Hey, John.
Hi.
What's happening? How you been?
About the same.
About the same. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. That's
Can
right. It's
you,
good. It's good to see you. Yeah, I can see you. I can see you.
okay, good.
It's good to see you. Good to see you. Been reading some of your posts. I know you just came out with a book, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
A handbook.
It's like 60 something pages, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it's very short. It's a quick read.
Mm. I'd like to talk about it, and I don't want to get away from it because I know we can start talking. Like we just start talking and talking,
Sure.
like we did last time.
Whatever comes up.
But yeah. So I was actually taking a little walk about 15 minutes ago, and I just try to like connect with higher self to higher self before the show, and I got right away. We need to talk about this little handbook. So I think we ought to start with that if you're okay with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I understand it's available. It's an ebook, I guess. People can
No, it's both.
It's both. Okay.
It's both. Yeah. Some people like paper.
Yeah. What's it called?
It's called From Magician to Master.
I like that. I like that. And so did you just put it out like over a couple of days, or were you working on it for a while?
It came to me as all my writings do, just as an urge.
Yeah.
And so I follow the urge. I don't give any thought to what I'm going to do in any respect ever.
Yeah.
And I follow the urge. So I started writing, and it wrote itself extremely quickly. And then actually formatting and editing takes longer than writing sometimes. And then published it, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, something like that.
Right on.
Not very long, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. Time doesn't mean too much to me.
Yeah, exactly. Can you give us like a little overview of it? I mean, is it? It sounds like it's applicable to this now moment.
Well, it's not the kind of thing that perhaps someone that is deeply involved in quote unquote spirituality, whatever that means,
You're right.
would likely read without understanding a little bit about it. In fact, I had a few people say, what the hell is this? I thought you knew what you're talking about. And of course, I had to assure them I haven't the slightest idea what I'm talking about. But the concept of creating, I don't use the word creating, I use the word manifesting, but let's just say creating your reality is talked about a lot. And when we talk about creating or manifesting your reality, we're talking always about your life experience in the world. The way I explain that is your experience in the dream.
Yeah.
Most people, let's say most of the world's population, is unconscious of how to consciously manifest or create their own reality. They are always creating it, but it's haphazard, and it's always done through the volition of their conditioning.
Yeah.
So whatever shows up in their world is always being created in a way through whatever is the most pressing conditioning that they have, whatever that propensity happens to be. In my case, for example, I was unseen as a child. I felt I was unseen. That doesn't mean I was, but I felt I was. And that influenced virtually all of my adult life until I basically jumped off the cliff into self-discovery. And it colored everything that I did. So if you look at that times 7.5 billion people, virtually everyone's life, their life experience, their world reflects whatever is most intense in their conditioning. Some people will be heavily involved in activism, for example.
Yeah.
And the activism might be directed towards, let's say, child abuse or the abuse of women. If you look deep beneath the story, the drama, then you'll find that somewhere in there, without any story connected to it, there is a reference in their conditioning to the energy of abuse. And then if you go deeper than that, there'll be something connected to the energy of shame, remorse, and unworthiness.
Mm.
So these are the things that allow them to see who they're not.
Mm.
So taking that full circle to creating your own reality, if you know how to create your own reality, if you know the so-called formula, I call it the creator's formula, to create your own reality, then in a way, you could say you're on the fast ramp. You're taking the urge that you have within yourself consciously rather than haphazardly, and you are manifesting it without any question, manifesting it much faster than you would if it was just haphazard. So you could say that instead of having 100 incarnations to get through all this stuff, you have one.
Yeah.
And so the creator's formula is the first half of the book, and it focuses entirely on basically creating your own dream within the grand dream.
Yeah.
It's not real, but it is what's happening for most people. I should say that consciousness, which is the I am or God, the self in capital letters, who we really are, is experiencing the dream as a reality. It's just the dream is not real. There's two different things happening there. The universe, the world, the experience is not real, but the experience by the self, by who you really are, who we really are, is real. So how does this help? What good is this? In order for anyone to reach the stage where they're ready to look within as an exclusive aspect of their life, a priority in their life, to dive into self-discovery, to dive into the freedom that they are, call it whatever you want, there's hundreds of names. They have to be in some way fed up with the way they've been living, the way the world's been living. And if you are into history, the way the world has been living for recorded history, and probably much, much longer than that. If that satiation, if that frustration, if that fed up state is not there, then people will take the roller coaster ride of happiness and sorrow and accept it as the price that you pay in order to have the highs. You have to have the lows. They'll live in it. They'll accept it. They'll say, okay, you got to take the good with the bad. That's the typical saying. But if you are satiated, let's say more quickly, because you're able to create whatever you want, and you see that none of it is bringing you true joy. I separate the words happiness from joy. Many people in spirituality will use the word happiness. I use the word happiness as a different thing than joy. Happiness is the opposite of sorrow in my language. Joy is an unbroken flat line that you can have it even in the midst of extreme pain. You can be in a flat line of joy. Suffering does not touch joy. Suffering is as a result of belief in victims, and victims comes about as a result of the belief in separation. When you know that you're one, not just believe that you're one, when you know that you're one, then the concept of separation dissolves. It doesn't dissolve. You know it's there. You just know that it's not true. And as a result, suffering departs and joy enters. The concept of happiness and sorrow is still seen, but you don't experience it. You experience the flat line of joy. So when one is tired of the sorrow, happiness roller coaster, in other words, when they're satiated with the dream, perhaps because they've experienced a lot of it rather than just haphazardly creating here and there, their approach to the no matter what choice, which is another word for total surrender, to freedom, the freedom that you are, not freedom you have, can be much quicker. I have to say this is a guess on my part because I don't know why I wrote the book. I just know it was given to me and I wrote it. And that's the only thing that I can come up with as the reason for writing the creator's formula for manifesting anything you want, so that you speed up the process of frustration in a way, speed up the process of satiation with the dream. You know, you've had it all, done it all, been there, got the t-shirt. and I want out of here. I want to be free. Something like that.
You want to be the freedom
That you are.
not that you're
That
gonna, and you said a couple of things that jumped out. I don't want to get you off track. So one, let me just restate something. I think, and I love this. So the dreamer, the real dreamer, the dreamer knows it's not real. The fractal or fractals in the dream, the aspects in the dream, see it as real. But within that dream, the suffering, as an example, what I'm kind of getting is like you get to a point where you realize that's not real, but this joy can be real, and that flat line you're talking about. I really get what you're saying. The other thing that comes to mind is when you talk about hitting rock bottom or being fed up or being satiated with the part of the dream, the experience that you now see that you have a choice, basically, and with that choice comes your personal sovereignty and so on and so on. How important is it to? I know there's a feeling of satiation and fed up. You know, I'm done with that. Thank you very much. But other feelings, how important is it? Is it important at all to incorporate or align, or how important is bringing your feelings into manifestation? Is it a big part of it to merge your feelings? I mean, your depth, your emotion. I don't know what the right word is. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let me just go back to the real dreamer, which was the first thing you said. There is no real dreamer. There's only the real and the dreamer. Right. If you're dreaming, you're asleep. You don't know who you are. You may think you know who you are. Most spiritual people say I'm awake, but they're just awake to the possibility of freedom. They're not really free. This is a mental thing, and you have to be totally ruthlessly authentic with yourself to realize this. Yeah. You're dreaming only when you don't know you're dreaming. When you are the observer, when you are the self, capital letters, the I am consciousness, you know that you are, if you're still in a physical body, you know that you're in a dream, the universal world experience. You know that you're in a dream, but you are not dreaming. You're observing what's being dreamt. There is a collective conditioning still generating the dream. And that you're observing it, but you know that it's not real. You're experiencing it as the original manifester of it in order to taste contrast, which is why we created it, why we made it up, was to taste contrast, to know ourselves, to see ourselves, because the absolute cannot know itself. It needed a mirror. To get back to your final question about feelings, is it necessary to manifest those feelings? No, absolutely not. If you have an urge to do that, let's say you have an urge to go out and do something, so-called do, in parenthesis, because we're not the doers, go out and do something in the world, such as right now, I think there's a lot of stuff going on about the burning going on in Amazon. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are focused on that. And you'll hear lots of people talk about healing and let's stop this. And, you know, we need to stop the perpetrators. And why does this happen? And, you know, these are the lungs of the earth and all of this kind of stuff. None of this has anything to do with reality. It has to do with what's happening in the dream. But it is useful from the perspective of self-discovery, of discovering what it is that triggers you. Because when you are triggered, that's a finger pointing to the conditioning within you, specifically your unique world, that's ready to be transformed. So if you're incensed by anything, doesn't matter what it is, and perhaps blustery, perhaps extremely angry, to the point of showing it physically, maybe even being sick physically. However you manifest it, this is an enormous blessing pointing to something that's ready. It's like a pimple or a blister that's ready to be burst in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you're supposed to burst boils, but, but anyway, whatever you're supposed to do. And if you've made the choice to look at this, truly look at this, not this one issue, but look at any issues like this, then you go beneath the story. Now, this is very difficult because people want to talk about dramas and stories. This is the Course in Miracles says the ego seeks but never finds. This is how it never finds. It's wound up in the story. It's wound up in the dream. If you can go to the feeling, which you mentioned, beneath the story, now you start to get close to what really has been the cause behind the manifestation of your unique world, because your world is totally different than everybody else's. Similar in some ways, many ways. We can all agree that the grocery store is down the corner. Most of us can. Or that France is where it is, or that the sun comes up at a certain time. We can agree on many, many things, but our worlds are each individually unique.
Yeah.
As long as we're dreaming.
Yeah. And
when this is shown to you, and it is being shown to you, who's it being shown to you by? It's being shown to you, you meaning the self, the sleeping self, what I call the God self, the slumbering self, the sleeping beauty, is being shown by the awakened aspect of itself. It's not really an aspect, that sounds like separation. To the awakened, fully conscious self is talking to itself about something which is keeping it asleep.
Yeah.
Which is apple. This is the poison that's keeping you asleep. And so it's helping you to awaken fully. And awaken fully means to be totally consciously aware of the God that you are. Let's call it 24/7, 365. You're always awake and beyond time. This is like lightning fast way of moving from dreamer to, let's call it, the observer in the audience. There are many, many levels then. I call this freedom with baggage. It's like you still are carrying some of this stuff, in parenthesis, but you're sitting on one of the rows of the amphitheater watching the play or the movie. And as you become more cognizant of the fact that you've been dreaming, and you recognize that what's on the stage is not you,
right,
you kind of move up in the seats higher and higher and higher, so that the baggage then becomes just an echo.
Yeah.
And then eventually you could say you're in the top seat and it's just a whisper. You're observing, you're watching, but you're virtually unaffected by anything that's going on. It doesn't mean to say that you approve of the child being abused.
Yeah.
But you're not wound up in the fact that it's real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean to say that you wouldn't do something if you were in a position, if you happened to be there for any reason, that you could intervene. It's highly unlikely, but it could happen, that you wouldn't do something.
Right.
But you still would look at both the so-called victim, which you wouldn't look at as a victim. You'd look at it as a self, and the perpetrator, which you wouldn't look at as a perpetrator. You'd look at it as the self, two actors. You'd look at them as the God they are. Yeah. But you still might slap the perpetrator. You see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But no judgment, zero
right.
judgment. You'd be slapping with love.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, and it might be a hard slap. You know, I mean, you might put the person in the hospital, but you still would love that individual because you know it's you. Yeah. It's just you.
So it's not the person, and it's not the situation or the event or what you're viewing. You go in and find that feeling.
Yes.
And that feeling is the door to what the gift is, basically.
What the gift is. You allow yourself to feel it, which might be seconds. Yeah. It's more likely to be at least minutes, and it could be, quite some time. Yeah. Not usually very long. Certainly an hour would be a long time. It might be 20 minutes. And then, because you are one, because we're all one, because there is only one, you could call it all that is. Everything, no matter, as Mother Teresa said, this is she called it the Christ or Jesus. in all his disgusting disguises when she was working with the, the poor and so on. You know that everything you're looking at, everything you're observing is you. And so genuine self-love is loving the feeling, even though the feeling might have been related to something shameful.
Yeah.
And it may have been incredibly disgusting. Yeah. And you may have been in tears, and you might have been retching with the pain of the feeling. But you embrace it. I call it embrace it rather than loving it, because when you're conditioned, you have no concept of what unconditioned love is. Lots of talk about it, but it's not unconditioned. You embrace it, and then grace, which is also you, love in action, but aware, transforms that layer of, it's like pastry, there are many layers, that layer of conditioning. You could say you're gradually stepping off the wheel of karma.
Yeah.
You are not balancing karma. You're not bringing good karma for bad karma, because karma will still bring you back, good or bad. You're going to keep coming back as long as you have karma. Karma is an illusion as well as reincarnation, but within the dream, it's real.
Yeah.
So you are transforming it back into nothingness. This is called self-discovery. And that essentially is part of what I'm talking about in part 2 of this book, where you become the master after the magician realizes that all of this stuff that I'm creating, that I'm manifesting, is not bringing me joy. It brings me a roller coaster of happiness and sorrow, just faster and bigger, which is what I experienced.
No, I want to get into the second part. You just brought it up, but you said something early on too that I didn't want to overlook, because I think it spoke to me. And what I mean by that is that I think from the awakening, the wiping the sleep from the eyes, human, if you want to put it in those terms, and I understand what you're talking about. I don't want to get caught up in the wrong nomenclature here, but
it doesn't matter.
But you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, okay, as we're finding our way, whatever you want to, you said, as you were describing in the early description of this book, and then you made the statement, then you can see what you are not.
Yes.
Now, can you explain that? Because I know there's gold there, because so much of the time we hear, well, that's all me, which is true, but I think there was something important behind that statement. Could you elaborate on that?
Some people refer to satsang. I almost never get involved in Eastern terminologies or Sanskrit or any of that sort of thing. God bless those that do, but I don't do it because I like to be absolutely simple, what I call see-spot run, and absolutely clear. But in this particular explanation, this definition of satsang is standing in the fire of who you are not. Now, why is that a fire? Well, because to look at those aspects of yourself which you have hidden, perhaps are completely hidden from you. You're not even aware of them. For example, I didn't know that I was arrogant, even though people told me all the time. And I didn't know I was spiritually arrogant, even though people told me not quite as often, but they did. I had to see it for myself, but I saw it because I made the no matter what choice to be free. Life, when you make this choice, or to totally surrender, to be free, which really means to recognize the freedom you are, life will show you, like instead of a cap gun going bang, 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 it's like a machine gun. Very, very quickly show you who you are not through the mirror of your life.
Yeah.
And it happens over and over and over very quickly, because now you are open to it. You're not resisting it.
Yeah.
Most people still on the planet resist the dream, resist what is, and therefore they suffer.
Yeah.
When we open, the suffering reduces and finally is eliminated completely. We're still in pain because we have a body, but it's eliminated. The suffering's eliminated, and we're now open to that which we did not want to look at before because it was too painful. Painful interpreted as suffering.
Yeah.
So now we're not suffering, we're in pain. This hurts like hell. But yeah, I want to turn over every stone. I want to see who I'm not. And when you do this, you meaning anyone, then it's exactly, the analogy is perfect. It's exactly the same as the sun has always been in the sky. The clouds are being cleared away. And when the clouds are cleared away, duh, there I am. It really is that simple. I didn't earn it. I didn't get enough brownie points to get there. I didn't grow towards it. I didn't expand. I didn't get better. I just rediscovered really who I am.
Yeah.
Because I removed, and I didn't do it really. The self did it. This I that most people think they are, this false self, did nothing. It got out of the way. And there I am.
Yeah.
So this is very, very fast. It's not as fast as self-inquiry, which I also speak about in part 2.
Mhm.
Self-inquiry is absolutely guaranteed to bring everyone to their, call it liberation, if you like.
Are there knees?
Self-realization, if you like, to the God that they are. Absolutely guaranteed to bring anyone to the God that they are in this lifetime.
Yeah. So it sounds like you get to, well, you're describing the magician, and then part 2. So the magician gets to a certain point of awareness, alchemy, magic, whatever you want to call it. Satiation. And then says, okay, now I want to choose my experience. Is this what the manifesting, the master?
What happened for me, and I'll use an example. You know, the Course in Miracles. The scribe for that was Helen Schuckman, who was a psychologist. She was Jewish, and she was an atheist. So she had all the criteria to not write the book, because it was supposedly written by Jesus, spoken by Jesus to her.
Yeah.
Whether you believe that or not doesn't matter. It's a beautiful text.
Yeah.
She and I can't recall the fellow's name right now that she was partnered with in Columbia University. They were both sitting together. They were incredibly frustrated, and one of them, or both of them, simultaneously said, "There must be a better way." This is chronicled somewhere in a book about her. And that, when said in any words, when said with sincerity, with deep sincerity, heartfelt sincerity, is like a key to open the floodgates of the light of truth that you are. Because it's been waiting, you could say it's been waiting for eons in so-called time for those words of sincerity. It's a humble cry to be shown the truth. So it doesn't matter how it's said. You know, you're on your knees where you can't trip, and you're asking, please show me, you know, what the hell's going on. Just whatever the words are, doesn't matter. And that moment opens the floodgates.
Yeah.
So that's when the magician, who now knows how to create whatever he or she wants in the dream, now realizes that this is not going to bring me joy.
Yeah.
Because, for example, in my case, I had it all, literally, what everybody wants. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. When you reach a certain point, whether it's, you know, 10 million or 100 million or a billion, basically your life is not that much different. So I had it all. And I had all the so-called happy experiences that people talk about. But there was a simmering misery beneath the surface. And it took me a few years because I couldn't accept the fact that I have it all and yet I'm miserable. This makes no sense. There must be something off. Literally years. And then finally I just said, okay, I can't do this anymore. Literally, I can't stay in this body any longer unless I find the way. And so that's the line in the sand where the magician says, show me, in whatever words. And that is when the floodgates open and you are shown who you're not in abundance, not just a little bit here and there. Life is always showing you, always, everybody, every minute, but mostly it's missed because, you know, they're too busy with the dream. Yeah. But when you're paying attention, you say, this is number one, this is priority. I've got to know who I am. I've got to know what the truth is. Then you're watching everything. You're paying attention and you get extremely good at this. Self-discovery then becomes part of your life, but it's still slow. And so to shift into the master, which is just basically saying you are consciously aware of who you are, of who you really are, which is God.
Yeah.
And I say that with the greatest humility, because that's what happens when you're totally aware of this. And you're never not aware of this. And it's impossible to be triggered by anything when you're aware of this. So that's for real. To get there, self-inquiry is, it's actually the only way, as Ramana explained. All other methods will just simply bring you back to the dream, I'm paraphrasing, when you stop doing them. That self-inquiry does. And I can explain it very, very quickly if you like.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is part of it, but the other thing, one of the other things that jumped out at me, because I get so much, and I think we all do, we get so much out of the personal experience that's then verbalized. You mentioned earlier, as you were talking about it, and I don't know if this is related, it might be, into what you're about to get into, when you said you didn't realize you were arrogant, you didn't realize you were spiritually arrogant. Like, as a little case study of self-inquiry, I'm assuming that's how you got there or came to this conclusion. What was that like? And is this related to self-inquiry? But what was that like?
No, it's not directly related, but
I mean, in other words, what did that do for you? How did, what was that when you went through that? I mean,
I actually wrote an article 2 days ago called "How It Was for Me," which is an explanation of how it was for me. Only very short, because my articles are very short. The awareness of arrogance. I mean, I was literally the actor on the stage having the tomatoes thrown at him and all the other groceries thrown at him. And I just make a salad. I didn't realize. I was so arrogant that I couldn't believe that they even knew what they were talking about, literally. And this happens for a lot of people that have been, very successful in the so-called successful in the material world.
Yeah.
They really believe their own media coverage.
Yeah.
You've heard that story before. They're believing their own publicity.
Yeah.
Well, I did. I mean, nobody was telling me. I was telling me, clearly. I mean, look I've done what hardly anybody can do. And I did it from scratch. I didn't get it from anybody, and I failed many times before I got there. So, yada, yada, yada to myself, self-talk about how great I was. And all of it beneath the radar of my awareness. I didn't know I was saying this to myself. So I was extremely arrogant, and I would hear it from people quite frequently. But I would just think, oh, well, they're just joking or whatever. If I thought about it at all, and I hardly ever thought about it. But when I then got into deeply involved, when I jumped off the bridge, off the cliff, into self-discovery, when I made the plunge in 1999, totally. I'd already been at it 23 years, but I made the plunge totally. That was my life then. I started to hear this, that I was arrogant, but there are so many nuances to the spiritual community that I just thought that this was another kind of envy.
Yeah.
So I didn't pay much attention to that either. It wasn't until I stood in the deepest fire, which began about 10 years ago, almost exactly, after the first 10 years of being with Kali Ma and being brought to my knees, my arrogant knees from the material world.
Yeah.
Then I really hit the blast furnace. And I was told unequivocally what an ass I was. And, I mean, I don't even remember it really now. I just know that it was there. And so I was in enormous pain, just enormous pain, because I resisted. The suffering only comes because we resist. As soon as you say yes to what is, the suffering almost immediately goes away.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even know about that. All I knew is that what I was hearing was painful, but I also knew that I'd made the no matter what choice to be free, so I wasn't going to run. And, I've been married 4 times. That's a runner. That's a runner. Well, you could say, first of all, that's stupid, and then you could say that's a runner. But whatever it was, I definitely didn't want to face anything.
Yeah.
And so I stood in the fire because I'd made this choice. Had I not made the choice, I would have run the first week. And so I heard this over and over and over again. Many other things I heard, that you are spiritually arrogant. And, you know, I don't need to go into the explanation. It doesn't serve to go into the explanation, but I finally got it. I finally got it. And that was an enormous part of the conditioning that had defined my life, that had actually allowed my material life to manifest the way it did, because I had this not being seen conditioning that also made me feel like I was not worthy, not good enough. And so therefore, how could I possibly achieve anything? So I had, you've heard of a patch on a program, a computer program. Have you heard that expression? Yes. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I know what that is. It's like a temporary fix. So this arrogance was like a temporary fix on my unworthiness, to allow me to take the creator's formula that I knew how to do since I was 20 and make it actually work. But of course, what happens with your conditioning is, even if you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve, beneath it, there is still this, there's something wrong. Why am I not feeling better? Why is this not making me feel really good? You see? And that's the blessing, of course, because that's the conditioning manifesting as an underlying cause of misery that will always be there until you are totally free. For most people, it manifests because they don't know how to manifest consciously. It will manifest as what they call failure. Oh, I tried this, I tried that, it didn't work, I'm no good, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough education, I'm the wrong sex, I don't have the right family, there's 1,000 reasons why I can't make my life the way I want it to be. But anybody can. I mean, absolutely anybody. And very often people that don't know anything, you know, the Henry Fords of the world. Was he in joy? Well, just take a look at a photograph. There's no joy there at all. No criticism. It's just there was no joy.
True.
One of the richest people in the world. And look at virtually anyone like that. You don't see the joy shining from their eyes. And that wasn't in mine either. So anyway.
That was good. That was good. And then the self-inquiry. The self-inquiry you talk about in the second part of the book.
Self-inquiry has been spoken about in different ways for as long as consciousness has been unconscious. The Bible calls it the fall of man, really means the fall of conscious awareness of who you really are. And it's certainly a lot longer than 6,000 years ago in terms of time, which doesn't exist either. It is so simple that it's almost unacceptable to the vast number of people that are alive today, because the concept of no pain, no gain is so enormous. The concept of I have to work hard to get there. And this is very true in the spiritual community. You hear it in many, many different spiritual beliefs. You know, I've got to really work at this. You've got to be really vigilant. You do have to be vigilant, but it's not hard work. It's easy, but it's difficult.
It's simple, but it's not easy. That's what you're saying. It's simple.
I wish I'd said that. That's what I mean, exactly.
I get you. Yeah.
Okay, so it's very simple. You have something comes up. You see somebody walk along the street, and whether you say it or think it, doesn't matter. Oh God, why is that woman wearing that dress? This could be a man or a woman, or it could be a child, an older person, doesn't make any difference. Why is she wearing that terrible dress? These are the words that are happening in the mind or in the spoken word. And then immediately what you do is say to yourself, and you could say it openly, but usually it's mental, to whom does this thought arise?
Yeah.
And that's part 2. And part 3 is, who am I? Never without the attempt to answer that question, ever. And here's what happens. This I that made this statement is the mind. And it's the mind with all the conditioning. And this is a factory full of gremlins. And it's used to hiding in plain sight as me. It's on my birth certificate, it's on my license, it's on my passport, it's what everybody calls me, it's what I call myself. This is me. And if you want, here's my resume, my biography. I spent a lot of money making this, you know, what do you call it? The VT or VT, whatever it's called, your biography. And people actually believe this is who they are. So the false self, people call it the ego. I don't, because there's so many connotations. The false self is hiding in plain sight because everybody, not everybody, but virtually everybody, believes this is who they are.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to hide. But as soon as you start to throw light on it by asking this question, to whom does this thought arise? Me. Well, who am I? You are throwing light on the imitator.
Yeah.
That has been masking the sun, clouding the sun for eons in time. And what it does, if you do this enough, if you're vigilant with it, it's not difficult, but you must be vigilant with it. If you do it enough, it begins to withdraw. Now, where can it withdraw to? Well, there's only one place it can withdraw to, where it came from. It came from the self, because in order for the self to create the universe, it had to forget who it was. And it did that through the belief in separation. Separation creates a from here to there. And so therefore you've got time and space and you have manifestation. It doesn't matter what the scientists say the universe is made of. It started with separation. So what's happening is it withdraws back into the self, large capital letters, and dissolves. What else can it do? It dissolves. Yeah. It's so simple. It's literally see, spot, run. It's so simple that the mind, which of course is the false self, can't wrap around it and just, oh, well, you know, that sounds great, that's wonderful, and then poo-poos it. Yeah. So it's very easy to dismiss the power of it. But it is the single greatest, I'll call it a method, in parenthesis, method of liberation that there is. And if a person was to do that so that it becomes second nature, so that it becomes like breathing in and breathing out, so that it's virtually hundreds of times a day you're saying, to whom does this thought arise? You could say, to whom does this feeling arise? Yeah. I mean, there are many ways to put it, but something came up, it triggered you, and instead of going into your feelings and then getting below the story and then feeling the feelings and then embracing the feelings and then allowing grace to transform it, that's a long process. It works. It's a long process. You're just simply handing it over. No thought, no figuring out, no analysis, no doing, in parenthesis.
No answer.
Nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I just had an epiphany because 8 years ago, I started to, whatever you want to call it, I would hear, you know, I was given this concept or idea of Soulogy and whatever as I was going down this path, and I would hear for about 6 months, every day I would hear, it's not about you. And now, and that's taken on different levels of understanding and awareness over the last 8 years. But now that I'm talking to you, it just went to a different level altogether. It's not you at all.
It's not you at all.
There is no you.
That's it. There is no you. Yeah. I told you this on the last show. There's no John Mcintosh.
Yeah.
You know, you need the identification to function in the dream.
Yeah. But
there's a knowingness that as our beautiful brother Jesus said, of myself, I am nothing. It's such a powerful statement.
And so
myself.
Right. And so the connection, I guess this is in part 2 as well, the connection between this self-inquiry and the questions posed and no answers given in that evolution, how does that connect to the manifestation part?
Well, let's say that, as in my case, 5.5 years ago, I crossed the bridge. Something happened. You could call it the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess. You know, the last, to whom does this thought arise? I crossed the bridge. And I didn't go back. The bridge actually gets burned behind you as soon as you cross it. And so now the self, I like to call it life is living you.
Yeah.
So getting back to manifestation, the creator's formula, you're still in the dream. That is, if you choose to stay in the dream, or let's say you choose to remain visible in the dream. For every Ramana, for every Papaji, for every Muji, for every Eckhart Tolle, there's 1,000, probably 10,000 that we don't know anything about at all, that are still in a body, hidden somewhere, helping to balance the light. You could say, to make it simple. But you're visible, and you're so-called doing. You're not really doing, but so-called doing it to most of the world. It looks like you're doing. Then the same formula, so-called formula, is functioning, which is, in summary, an intention that you put attention on with passion.
Okay.
Add to that 2 little caveats. You must believe it. And there's a certain amount of work, but most of the work is done by the self. So it's intention, attention, passion.
Yeah.
So if you say it quick, once again, it seems too simple, but that's
But
how.
Yeah, I think that's what what you just connected another dot for me when I asked about feelings, but there is a difference. And the word you're using is more appropriate to me. It's passion.
Yeah, passion is different. Passion is, and emotion is another thing that's different. That's a tool of the mind.
Yeah.
But your passion is like a fire.
Yeah.
It's an unquenchable fire. But when you're so-called free, in parentheses, when you are freedom itself, you are not attached to, you don't identify with, and you have no expectations from that passion. So it literally is the burning bush analogy.
Yeah.
It's a fire that doesn't consume.
Yeah.
You are guided, for example, I'll use the book itself as an example. I got call it an inspiration if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fire I was very familiar with because I get it every day when I write an article or two. And I you could say I obey. I just pick up the pen and I start writing, and it literally 90% writes itself. There's some editing afterwards, but it writes itself. So the book wrote itself. But I could not write it.
Right.
You see, because the self had said, "This is what's next." I mean, there are other things you're doing at the same time. You still brush your teeth and you eat and you sleep and so on. But this is what's next. And so I just went ahead and life lived me. The book got written. The manifestation of the creator's formula manifested the book. You could say through this body, not through me, because there is no me, through this body, because there's an instrument here.
Yeah.
And went through the processes of getting it published.
Yeah.
Where it goes from there is none of quote unquote my business. There is no my to have a business, but let's say John's business. It's not up to me.
That's right.
One person reads it. Cocker Spaniel reads it, and that's it. Or 1 million people, or 10 million people. It doesn't matter. Or maybe not for 50 years. I mean, there's. I think if you saw The Matrix in, I think it was 1999, The Matrix came out. It was a flop.
Yeah.
And now it's a phenomenon. There's a wonderful Christmas movie called, I think it's a Wonderful Life.
Jimmy Stewart. Yeah.
Absolute flop when it came out.
True.
Now it's a Christmas classic.
Yeah.
So Source, the self, knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't think about this is for next week. No, this is for the next century, maybe. Yeah. Because there's no time.
And that fire, that passion, that burning bush is actually, it's the same thing in every one of us. It just looks different.
In every one of us, but it usually is tainted by conditioning.
Yeah.
Or it's suppressed.
Yeah.
Because the single biggest conditioning that the so-called human being has is unworthiness.
Yeah. Small. Yeah.
I'm not good enough to do this.
Yeah. And Yeah, good stuff. Very good stuff. Very timely, I think, for what's going on. 5:55 in New York, for those who follow numbers. um,
Can I just comment on what you just said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because that was actually how I was going to start. I mentioned to you before that there's within the dream, there is this cycle of about 10,000 years that's feminine and 10,000 years that's masculine, and then 2 periods of 2,000 years, which is neutral. Some people call it the photon belt.
So it's 10, 10, and 2.
Yeah, well, it's 10, 2, and then 10.
Oh, 10, 2, 10, 2. Okay.
Yeah,
I remember you talking about that last
so
time.
we're just moving into the 2.
Okay.
And as that happens, the divine feminine, as it happens, is balancing, not destroying, balancing the dysfunctional masculine, divine masculine patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that happens is the house of cards must fall. And so what do we see in the world growing over the last 20 years, particularly the last few years?
Yeah.
This collapsing dominoes everywhere.
Yeah.
Call it insanity.
Yeah.
It looks like the best of times and the worst of times, but it's exactly what's happening. So there are more and more people who used to poo-poo spirituality that are now scratching their head.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why this book got written.
Yeah. Very good. And a couple of people have asked, and I'm interested too. We can get this on your website, is that right?
Yeah, on my website, johnmcintosh.info.
Here, let me just pull it up for everybody.
Of course, it's available. You can, that's the website. You can see in the top left there the actual URL, and under John's books, you'll find it.
All right. And so now you blog daily. And,
yes.
And then I think you share a lot of these. I see them every day on Facebook. But
yeah, every day.
This is where they originate from, right? This website.
Well, no, this is they originate. I put them on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on, and then I also put it on my blog. The blog I actually don't use. I post it directly to Facebook.
I got you.
Yeah, there's the book there, and then
From magician to master, the creator's formula, making your dreams come true. Kindle.
Kindle or soft cover, but obviously Kindle is a very easy way to go. Almost everybody has got that, and if you don't, I think right underneath where it says Kindle, I think, I could be wrong, but somewhere in there they give you the free app. Somewhere on the page they give you the free app if you don't have it.
Yeah, it's right over here. Right over here.
Oh, okay, great.
Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, very cool. Very cool, man. Are you working on another one? I guess you don't know until it comes.
Well, because I write these articles every day, after a while you accumulate quite a few. So I have 4 books right now, which is called Navigating the New World series. And I am 80% finished. I'm actually just formatting. The book is finished. I'm formatting the 5th book in the series, which are basically articles, my articles. I have many other books. I have 25 books, but these 5 are part of that series of my articles. So that'll be out in the next month.
Right on. I'm going to post this URL, www.johnmcintosh.info/copy of book. That'll get you to the page. And then, of course, you'll be on the website for those of you who want to further explore it. I appreciate what you're doing. I enjoy talking to you. I'd love to collaborate with you again. Maybe when you come out with another book. And or whenever.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very thought-provoking. That's why I do what I do. That's part of my passion. Is
all the best with this shift in your life right now.
It's some deep shift.
Yeah, a deep shift. Yeah.
Yeah, deep shift. Yeah, you know how. Yeah, you think
I know exactly what it's like.
Yeah, I know you do. I guarantee it. Yeah, it's funny. You think you're flatlining in joy, and all of a sudden, you're prompted to do something.
Yeah.
And
you just say yes.
That's right. You just say yes. And
no matter what, and everything works.
Yeah, it's a special time. It feels special, and
oh yeah.
It's inspiring to hear these stories, and it's inspiring talking to you.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to doing it again. And you guys on the replay and the live, let's get over to John Mcintosh. Get over to his website, check out his books, check out his blogs. Let's support each other in this expansive time and place that we're in. And I'll see you again next time,
Thank you.
John.
Lots of love.
Yeah, lots of love to you, man. Take care.